Hawaii is trying to become the first state to legalize industrial hemp. Basically, a lot of states are growing hemp right now, and it's all for research purposes. I'm not sure if there's commercial crops being grown for industrial purposes, but I'm pretty sure there is. But there isn't actually a state that has this law change situation where they nullify federal prohibition and say, yeah, hemp, it's a plant that we can grow for industrial purposes, and see what's going on here. So Honolulu, bills introduced in the Hawaiian legislature would legalize industrial hemp production in the state, setting the stage to nullify federal prohibition of the plant in practice. A coalition of 5 Democratic senators introduced Senate Bill 163 on January 20th. The legislation would remove industrial hemp from the state's list of controlled substances and specifically exclude the growing, possession, processing, and sale of industrial hemp from civil and criminal penalties. And it's written kind of like this: no person shall be subject to any civil or criminal sanctions in this state for planting, growing, harvesting, processing, possessing, selling, or buying industrial hemp as defined in sections 712-1240. Passage of Senate Bill 163 would open the door for a full-scale commercial hemp market in the state by treating it as any other crop for farming, which is awesome. It should be treated that way. Senate Bill 163 would not require any license to grow hemp, but it would create no state regulatory, state regulatory structure. This would have a similar effect as the bill passed in Connecticut in 2015. In short, the state would treat industrial hemp like other plants, such as tomatoes. By ending state prohibition, residents in Hawaii would have an open door to start industrial hemp farming should they be willing to risk violating ongoing federal prohibition. And another bill, House Bill 773, has been filed in the Hawaiian House. The second bill, introduced in Hawaiian Senate, would also legalize hemp production. Senate Bill 1052 would expand the state's existing hemp pilot program. Currently, the state licenses hemp growers in the state for research purposes only. Senate Bill 1052 would require the state to license growers for commercial purposes as well. So even though the House is saying, okay, our bill says you can't get arrested for doing any of this hemp stuff, the Senate wants you to put in for a license to grow commercially. Passage of Senate Bill 1052 would have similar practical effect as SB 163, but it would establish a state licensing program to regulate the state's hemp industry. So this isn't an accompanying or a companion or anything like that. This is just a totally different approach to it. One saying that there will be licenses, which is, I mean, as long as the licenses aren't out of reach or don't like put any undue restrictions or burdens on the growers and processors of hemp, I guess it's pretty not much of a big deal. But to me, it doesn't make sense. If you got two things sitting there, one says you have to have a license, and then the other one says, well, why even bother with a license? Who cares? It seems like the people would rather have the other one, the one that don't have the license. Now let's talk about that farm bill that we keep talking about. In early 2014, President Barack Obama signed a new farm bill into law, which included a provision allowing a handful of states to begin limited research programs growing hemp, known as the Hemp Amendment. Now this it makes it sound like this is all some kind of Obama thing. Like it gives him all the credit. I don't like the guy, and I don't like his friend Rand Paul. Rand Paul I'd probably like more than Mitch McConnell, but Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul are those two people get the most credit for this farm bill. If nothing else, because they wanted to fight for their state's hemp industry, but if nothing else, it was more or less kind of like a libertarian farm bill thing. I don't know, it's their state, Kentucky, and Kentucky's well known for its hemp industry and all the families that grew hemp, that got the big shaft when hemp was bunched in with marijuana and made illegal. So anyway, this farm bill says allows state agriculture departments, colleges, and universities to grow hemp, defined as the non-drug oil seed, and fiber varieties of cannabis for academic or agricultural research purposes. But it only applies to states where industrial hemp farming is already legal under state law. So the states that have already made laws to allow for hemp farming, industrial hemp farming, were the ones that were considered for this. And at the time, I think it was only Kentucky and maybe a handful of others, Colorado, Tennessee, maybe Georgia. In short, current federal law authorizes the farming of hemp by research institutions only, for research only. Farming for commercial purposes by individuals and businesses remains prohibited. All three Hawaii bills simply ignore federal prohibition and authorize commercial farming and production in that state anyway. And then you have these other states. By rejecting any need for federal approval, state legislation of hemp sets the stage to nullify the federal hemp ban in practice. Hawaii could join other states, including Colorado, Oregon, Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, California, and others that have simply ignored federal prohibition and legalized industrial hemp production within their state borders. While prospective hemp growers still have to take federal law into consideration, by eliminating the state requirement for federal permission, these laws clear away a major obstacle to widespread commercial hemp farming within the borders of the state. As more states simply ignore federal prohibition, the likelihood of federal enforcement diminishes. Farmers in southeastern Colorado have started harvesting the plant in 2013. The farmers in Vermont began harvesting in 2014, effectively nullifying federal restrictions on such agricultural activities. On February 2nd of 2015, the Oregon hemp industry officially opened for business, and 1 week later, the first license went to a small nonprofit group. As more people engage in hemp production and the market grows within these states, more people will become emboldened, creating an exponential wave, ultimately nullifying the federal ban in effect. The federal ban is just ridiculous. Does the federal government think we're this childish and babyish? Like they think that hemp and marijuana is so closely related that, you shouldn't be allowed to grow hemp. That's always struck me as one of the dumbest things ever. I mean, not that it's already just super, super nanny state ridiculous for the state to come down on somebody for smoking marijuana. Basically saying that they know what's safer for you. Oh, it's better for you if we come in and arrest you for smoking marijuana because it's dangerous. Now, that's just absurd anyway, but now you're talking about hemp. Hemp has no THC in it. If it does, it's so little it's not going to do anything to you. And it's a crop grown for industry. There's a huge market for hemp. According to the 2005 Congressional Research Service report, the U.S. is the only developed nation that hasn't developed an industrial hemp crop for economic purposes. Experts suggest that the U.S. market for hemp is around $600 million per year. They count as many as 25,000 uses for industrial hemp, including food, cosmetics, plastics, and biofuel. The U.S. is currently the world's #1 importer of hemp fiber for various products, with China and Canada acting as the top 2 exporters in the world. During World War II, the United States military relied heavily on hemp products, which resulted in the famous campaign and government-produced film, Hemp for Victory. As you've seen on this channel, I've replayed that for you. The Hawaii bills would represent an essential first step towards hemp freedom in the Aloha State. And it would definitely further break the dam open for hemp in other states. I know in Michigan we have a campaign called My Legalize, which we were trying to not only legalize recreational marijuana and regulate it, and it didn't really affect our medical marijuana program if you read the ballot language, but it did, in fact, create a hemp industry around hemp. And it was one of the most comprehensive things I've seen in as far as legalizing hemp for industrial purposes. But it looks like Hawaii's heading in the right direction. Next thing going on here is these 3 bills will need to pass their respective committees by a majority vote before moving forward in the legislative process. Much like a lot of the other stories I've been talking about lately around the country, this is just getting introduced. This is getting talked to. It's about to get the ball rolling. The Senate Bill 163 was referred to the Senate Agriculture and Environment Committee, as well as the Senate Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Judiciary and Labor. So, and SB 1052 has not received committee assignments as a publication. And that's it. Hawaii is going to open the gates. Other states have already got their feet wet on the hemp production and manufacture. Hemp industry has the potential of saving the planet, people. And it can only do it if we do it full force. I mean, let's go back here. You got the different uses for hemp. Now, they said there's 25,000 uses for industrial hemp. And then it gives you these big things like food, cosmetics, plastics, and biofuel. If you could just replace those 4 things right there with hemp, you've done a lot to save the world. So good luck, Hawaii. Good luck anybody else that's trying to continue to legalize and normalize hemp, because it was a innocent bystander in the war on drugs, or whatever you want to call it. Even if for some reason you think marijuana should be illegal, I don't see where you come to hemp being illegal too. I don't see how you get there. Unless you're part of one of those industries and your competition is something that can grow in everybody's backyard. Yeah, that's when you start thinking, maybe we better make that illegal too. And that's why hemp was made illegal.